that Plato puts on the submergence of Atlantis is 11,600 years ago, 9,000 years before the time of Solon, which happens to coincide with meltwater pulse 1b and the end of the Younger Dryas, which I would have thought would cause you to rethink your position on Plato just a little.
Well, it's interesting. I'm open to the idea. I tend to read myths in the same way your guest Jordan Peterson does. That, you know, it's a story to deliver some sort of moral homily to us. It's a commentary on our own culture, our society. It's a literary way of delivering a message to people. That's how I tend to read. Instead of reading them like, let's see if we can figure out what happened historically.
But there's hard data in Plato's whatever you think it is, and that hard data is that the submergence of Atlantis happened 9,000 years before the time of Solon. That is a date. That is 9,600 BC. That is 11,600 years ago. This, to me, is a strong reason why we shouldn't just completely dismiss Plato's notion of a lost civilization of the Ice Age.
I'm not against that idea. I mean, the idea that, say, the parting of the Red Sea happened because of some impact.
That's not. I'm not proposing that. Please don't go there.
I'm not.
Waste of time.
Okay, but there are people that think that.
I don't.
Okay, or that the plagues of the Bible can be explained.
I don't go there.
By
Waste of time.
But,
deal with Plato.
All right. So, but my point is that some of them may have historical origins. Some of them may be completely made up as mythic stories for some other reason. You have to take them one at a time. In my opinion, the Plato one is a commentary on his own culture of Athens and being too bellicose, being too warlike, and that this is not good for where we're going. That's my opinion.
And the fact that he picks a date that coincides with the geologically significant date of flooding is not really going to change your opinion.
I think, again, that's
a pretty amazing coincidence.
Is it? I mean, we're finding a connection, not Plato. I mean,
well, Plato said there was an advanced civilization
with
with advanced agriculture, advanced architecture, advanced navigational abilities, which was submerged by the sea, swept from the face of the earth, so that mankind had to begin again like children with no memory of what went before. And lo and behold, he puts a geologically significant date on that, a date that we ourselves have only known is significant in the last 20 or 30 years.
Mm-hmm. So, where is this place, this Atlantis? I mean, so as you know, there's
not my problem.
There's a long history of people speculating. If we found a site, that would be a big plus.
Go do more marine archaeology.
Well, if we take it literally, obviously then it's below the ocean. But I don't necessarily take Plato's account literally, but I do say, well, it's rather coincidental that his dating falls exactly on meltwater pulse 1b when we know there was huge influx of water into the ocean. And also, if we look at his geography, it's interesting because he cites, basically a landmass west of the Pillars of Heracles, which is Pillars of Hercules, the Straits of Gibraltar, and he places this essentially in the mid-Atlantic. I think it was Crantor, one of the commentators on him, that said it was something like 3 or 4 days sail west. But if you look there is a sunken landmass that sank at the end of the last ice age because of the rapidly rising sea level. And this has been well established by marine geology, looking at evidence that the Azores Plateau underwent an isostatic subsidence, which would have been resulting from the rapidly rising sea level. We know there's no doubt that the North American continent has rebounded isostatically after the removal of this tremendous mass of ice that mantled North America up to anywhere from 1,000 to possibly 1,500 feet. Well, if you do a comparable isostatic adjustment of the mid-Atlantic ridge, you'll find that the Azores island complex are much, much larger. And it turns out that might actually be a nice place to develop at least a maritime culture, something along the lines of the Phoenicians or the Minoans, during the period of the Ice Age, because during the period of the Ice Age, the climate of the world was so much different than now. The Great Basin area was filled with huge lakes, vegetation, forests, savanna, and grasslands. Like Graham said, with the lower sea level, there were much larger areas of the coastline that were exposed. And that's probably where most of people would have resided during the Ice Ages, near the coastlines, because that would have been the most benevolent place. With the rising of the sea level, all of that's lost. And there's nothing really fringed about saying, well, people might have lived on islands in the mid-Atlantic, especially when we know that those islands most likely had a benevolent climate during the Ice Age. So I don't go into crystal technology and flying machines or
Me
whatever,
neither.
all of this
Me neither.
speculative stuff that has accreted to it. But if we just keep it simple and say, well, is it possible that a culture along the lines of the Minoans or the Phoenicians could have existed? Could they have existed on an island culture in the mid-Atlantic? And there's nothing really, extreme about that idea, in my mind.
Even the idea that a more advanced, sophisticated quasi-technological culture coexisted with hunter-gatherers isn't too strange. I mean,
Well, we've seen that in the 20th century.
We do so today. We coexist with hunter-gatherers in the Amazon jungle who don't even know we exist. I mean, so I don't see why a priori that's just an impossible idea to look
Am
at.
I misremembering that you, in your book, you mentioned Indonesia as a site for Atlantis?
I mentioned Gunung Padang not as a site for Atlantis. That's Danny Hillman Nathuwajaja, who is a geologist. He's Indonesia's leading expert in megathrust earthquakes, as a matter of fact. He has written a book proposing that Indonesia was Atlantis and that Gunung Padang, which he's been involved in investigating, is a site from Atlantean times. Danny has proposed that. Now, what's interesting about Indonesia is that Indonesia sits upon the Sunda Shelf. And the Sunda Shelf was one of the parts of the world that was most massively flooded at the end of the Ice Age. I mean, if you go back to the end of the Ice Age, you're not looking at the Malaysian peninsula. You're not looking at the Indonesian islands going out towards the Philippines. You're looking at a giant continent-sized landmass, all of which went underwater at the end of the last Ice Age, really rather rapidly. So I think he has a point. I think it's an interesting, it's one of those areas in the world where there was very large-scale flooding. Huge amounts of land were swallowed up. Also Sahel, the connection of Australia to New Guinea during the Ice Age was also washed away. There's a whole range of issues regarding sea level rise in that very area, which anybody with an interest in these subjects should be paying attention to.
So it's quite possible that, like today, many of the advanced civilizations of today are on the water, whether
Yes.
it's New York or Los Angeles, and that was probably the case back then. And so the idea of Atlantis might not have been about one particular area, but many advanced areas that were wiped out along with their knowledge.
With
Well,
rising
this
sea
is
level.
the thesis of that book I mentioned, Noah's flood, that the two geologists with the Black Sea theory, that there were, this rimmed with small villages, and the massive flooding almost instantly wiped out, and then that gets passed down as the oral tradition is these myths. To me, that seems totally reasonable.
Totally reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we get into more discussion about the actual impact hypothesis and the
Yes.
mega flooding so that we can get our,
Yes,
our
let's
guys
get
on standby, get
What
them
is-
involved.
What is your geologist, since you're by yourself and there's two of them, what is, it's only fair, right? What is your geologist opposed to what Randall and Graham are proposing?
I think it's on the impact hypothesis versus the multiple glacial dams that burst over periods of time, like that. I have that slide.
Okay, well, let's call him up and get him on Skype.
And
We've never done this before, so this might suck. Well, hopefully it'll work.
see this slide here. He is showing these are each independent carbon-14 dates of these different instant floods in North America.
Right.
From each individual ice dam.
And what
Growth.
separates these dates? They're separated by...
Well, looks like from 20,000 to 12,000, so all before the impact.
Well, 12,800, wasn't that one?
Oh, yes.
Mark's
right,
on the line.
right,
So
right,
it's
right.
Mark's on the line. What is this? Mark, Mark, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Mark Defend.
Mark DeFent, thank you very much for doing this. We really appreciate you coming on here.
It's my pleasure.
So you've had a chance to listen to these guys talk. What is your thoughts just stepping into this cold?
Well, first of all, I did not mean to upset Mr. Hancock. He seemed to be quite disturbed, and I want to apologize if I've disturbed him.
No, you haven't disturbed me, and I'm not upset. It's just simply that you're extremely selective in what you present in your draft, admittedly draft article that you've chosen to put online. You don't represent me
Let me
accurately.
go ahead and answer his question because I know we're getting short on time.
No,
here.
we have plenty of time. We have plenty of time.
Okay. Well, first of all, would you allow me just to address Göbekli Tepe for a minute?
Sure. Would you like to
Just
address
a
the
quick-
article first? I think that probably would be the most fair since we just brought that up.
Okay, I'm sorry. What was the question then?
Graham?
Well, I read out on air various passages in your article where you misrepresent me.
No, I didn't.
Sorry?
No, I didn't misrepresent you.
You didn't misrepresent me.
No.
Okay, so
In fact, you said that I said that that I was actually talking about someone in Indonesia when I said you didn't understand Newton's physics. You
no,
made
I
a
didn't say.
terrible
I'm sorry,
statement
I
of
didn't
physics
say.
there.
I didn't say you were talking about someone in Indonesia. I said you were talking about
You
Jesus.
don't know someone Newtonian mechanics.
Jesus Gamara in Peru is who I was talking about. And Jesus Gamara does have very exotic views on gravitation, which I state seriously are not my interest. I do say he may be right, but I don't say he's right. I say this is not my interest, and I go on to say what my interest in is his work. You pick
Excuse
on
me,
that.
you're drowning me out here. I was asked to explain whether or not I thought I was misleading. And I don't think I was misleading. You clearly state in there that maybe gravity was due to the way we've changed orbits around the sun. Gravity is not due to that. It's due to
No, I don't state that.
Mass and the inverse of, what do you mean?
I don't state that. Jesus
Yes,
Gamara
you
states
do.
that, and
I
I
quote
say
you
I
in there.
disagree with it.
Come on.
I say
Well,
I disagree
anyway,
with it.
I want to be respectful. I can't really hear you when I'm talking. I apologize, but I feel like you are selectively changing the meaning of what I'm saying.
Well,
Okay,
why don't you quote me as these words from my text? When you say that I buy the gravity thing of Jesus Gamara, why don't you quote me when I say
Hold on.
I said just the opposite of that.
what I go on to say, not quoted in the attack, is the following, quote, however, this isn't the part of his theory I'm interested in. Where I feel he is solidly persuasive is in his observations of the anomalous character of the monuments of the Andes. I am not pinning anything on Jesus Gamara's gravitational ideas. I am saying very clearly what it is in his approach that I am interested in. I'm not going to dismiss all of his approach because he has an approach on gravity that you don't like. That's not even of interest to me, and I say so in the book. You don't report that, therefore I suggest you misrepresent.
No, Mr. Hancock, what I brought up him for was simply to state that you didn't understand, and I say it right there, that you don't understand Newton's physics.
But I'm not even
So
talking
how are
about
we to take
Newton's.
you
I'm not
seriously
talking
as a
about.
scientist if you don't understand Newton's simple
I am
physics,
not
the
talking-
laws of Newton.
If I wished to make an argument about gravity, I wouldn't go saying that that isn't the part of Jesus Gamara's theory that I'm interested in. I'm interested in the other aspect of his work, his observations through years of field
wasn't
work.
that. My point was simply to point out that you didn't understand Newton mechanics.
But
We're
I
not
don't-
talking about this guy.
Stop,
You're
everybody,
completely
stop,
wasting
stop.
time here.
Okay, Graham,
I
the
don't-
way the article
Michael,
is
hold on a
printed.
second. Hold on. Let these guys talk it out.
We did misrepresent it. We did.
Yeah.
The way the sentence is structured, it's clearly out of context. We're going to change that.
Yeah, I was taken out of
Mark-
context, and that's what I'm objecting
Mark,
to.
I'm not sure why he included it in the book in the first place, but he's not arguing about the gravity at all. So we will fix that. Maybe we could get straight to the flooding thing that
As long
Randall was
as
talking about.
Graham is fine with that. I mean, Graham, I know there was something else.
Well, yeah,
that you objected
the
to.
other thing that I find to be misrepresenting is that the statement, yet Hancock makes the following stunning claim, quote, our ancestors are being initiated into the secret geometry and how to make swords and knives. What Mark Defant does not tell his readers is that I make that claim. I don't make that claim. I am actually reporting what is said in the Book of Enoch. That's not me who's saying
we will
that.
fix
That's
that.
the Book of Enoch.
Graham, we'll fix that.
Okay. Otherwise, let's get back to the main meat of this, for God's sake.
Okay.
Just give me the list of things that, and I'll fix it.
I will.
We'll fix it. Because
Okay.
that's not the point of it.
Well, Mark, you're obviously very critical of Graham's work, and maybe erroneously so. But let's get to what you think about what you've heard so far.
All right, Mr. Rogan. I don't want to come across as a pompous scientist. What I want to do is I want to protect people from these grandiose assumptions. Graham in his first, Mr. Hancock in his first book.
Please call me Graham.
Fingerprints.
Please call me Graham.
Okay, Graham in his first book in Fingerprints suggested that there was a continent where this civilization lived, and through some machinations, this continent went south and ended up destroying that civilization. Well, as a geologist, that's just nonsense. And now he comes back and he wants us to believe that he was all wrong. And then all of a sudden, it's okay now to believe in comet strikes to kill this famous civilization that's supposed to exist.
So, Mark,
this is duping people. I don't know if he means to do it, but he certainly seems to be duping people.
Mark, all my work is in print and online. I mean, I gather that you see your role as a protector for the public. Obviously, you feel that the public are not intelligent enough to make discerning decisions of their own in this respect.
No,
however, to address...
I'm saying that the public doesn't understand the science
to
the degree that you're misrepresenting.
So they need the superior knowledge of Mark Defant in order to understand it. Well, fine.
I think they need the knowledge of science.
Okay, well, that's
not
okay.
The knowledge that I have.
Let me come to your point, which is you're saying that I proposed one mechanism for cataclysm in Fingerprints of the Gods, and that I'm proposing another mechanism for cataclysm today. What I proposed in Fingerprints of the Gods was that there had been a gigantic cataclysm in the ballpark of 12,500 years ago. I looked at a number of possibilities, of which the most striking to me at the time was Earth crust displacement. And Earth crust displacement is reported as the work of Charles Hapgood, not my work, but I do report it in Fingerprints of the Gods as an excellent theory which explains the information. Since I wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, I've learned a lot. And I wouldn't want to defend that theory strongly today. I don't know if you have bought the latest edition of my book, the paperback edition of Magicians of the Gods, but it contains a chapter saying whatever happened to Earth crust displacement. I address the change of view in this, and I think I have a right to change my view, and I think it's healthy that, I mean, why would I stick permanently to a view that I hold in 1995 if new evidence persuades me that it's wrong? I'm sure that's a good thing, not a bad thing. And fundamental proposition is we had a massive global cataclysm in the ballpark of 12,500 years ago. So naturally, it's of great interest to me when a large group of scientists, more than 60 of them, over a period of more than 10 years now, present evidence of a massive comet impact event 12,800 years ago, exactly in the window I proposed.
You are implying that there are a lot of people out there that believe in this. There are some people that believe in it, I agree, but for the most part, I think taking an honest view, the comet hypothesis has gotten debunked.
Well, that's complete rubbish, Mark. That's complete rubbish.
I would also point out that in Fingerprints, you had people believing that the end of the world was coming in 2012. Now, how am I supposed to take you seriously when you say things like that and then change your mind? We could all be dead by now if we believed you.
I have absolutely changed my mind on the Mayan calendar. I regard the Mayan calendar as an interesting technological artifact with a better estimate of the length of the solar year than the estimate that we have with today. The Mayan calendar is based primarily on the position of the sun amongst the constellations at the winter solstice. And we are in an 80-year window when the sun sits astride the dark rift of the Milky Way between the constellations of Sagittarius and Scorpio on the winter solstice. That window is 80 years wide, so the story of the Mayan calendar, by the way, isn't actually quite over yet. But I'm not.
Means?
Yes, I know exactly what precession means.
Okay, well, all of this stuff that you claim is on a precession. A precession is the Earth spinning like a top.
Don't teach grandma to suck eggs.
It has nothing to do with running through comet clouds, and yet you're saying that somehow we're on some sort of cycle where the comets are going to come back and strike the Earth right now, sometime during the next 40 years. That's what you said in Magicians.
No, that's what Victor Klube and Bill Napier and Emilio Spedicato say. I'm a reporter.
You're the one that said it in your book. You just got all over
and
Mr. Michael Shermer for saying the same things about other people. I want to know what you think.
But Mark,
you tell me what you think.
I am a reporter, and I make it very clear
you can't cop out on it.
I'm not
doing
copping out.
science.
Let me finish.
You're talking about science.
Mark, we can't talk over each other like this.
I am a reporter, and it is my job to report the work of other people, and I report the work of Victor Klug, Bill Napier, and Emilio Spedicato, all of whom draw attention to the Taurid meteor stream and who regard it as the greatest collision hazard facing the Earth at this time, and who specifically indicate that we may run into a filament of the Taurid meteor stream in the next 30 years that is going to be very bad for our civilization.
It has nothing to do with precision.
When did I say it had anything to do with precession?
You have a whole section
It's not
on
called,
precession
yes,
in Magicians of the Comet.
indeed, as a clock, as a timer, as a way of going back through the ages, but I'm not saying precession is causing this encounter with the Taurid meteor stream, and go find the paragraph where I say that.
No. What you're saying is that we're on a cycle, that 12,000 years ago, this civilization was destroyed, and now you're saying, that civilization was so smart that they knew we were going to go through another shower and we're all doomed in the next 40 years.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't say doomed in Magicians like you did in Fingerprints, but we must conclude that that's your opinion, because I don't know anybody else that you've referenced on that issue.
Well,
but precession has nothing to do with that, and it's not even on that cycle.
I never
It has a cycle of about 21,000 years.
25,920 years, actually,
That is not
for
the
precession.
precession.
1 degree every 72 years, give or take a small margin. That is the precession. You're
fact,
really
differs with
teaching
time.
grandma to suck eggs here.
So anyway, I guess this has just been going on all day. You can't criticize Michael for bringing up other people that are saying strange things and comparing to you and say, oh no, you can't say that because it's not about me. It's not true. You're doing the same thing. You're reporting about other people and saying nonsense.
Yeah,
Mark,
I'm reporting the work of Victor Klug, Bill Napier, and Emilio Spedicato. And
that's what
I also indicate that I strongly support that work. That's as far as I go.
Mark, if I could stop you here, so you think that this comet wiping out all the Ice Age megafauna theory has been debunked? Is that what you're saying?
No, sir, I have not saying that, but I think that if you read the literature carefully, the majority of scientists right now, and I know that this is still a go, and you know what I like about the comet people is that they're doing it in the scientifically right way. They're getting people to review the material, they're getting people to go through that gauntlet to where they get criticized, they make sure that they do things right, and they get it out there. Firestone did this in 2007. He was crucified. He's come back. His group has come back with a lot of good stuff. So I want to wait and see this play out. I said that in my paper, that we're going to have to wait to get a conclusion here. So I'm not saying that they're wrong, but right now, if I read the literature as a scientist, I have to say that the comet guys are getting hit pretty hard.
What do you make of the latest platinum paper in Nature's Scientific Reports, the platinum anomaly across North America and its coincident in time with the Greenland ice cores and the platinum anomaly there? What do you say to that?
Well, I say that, and maybe we can bring him on. The problem with that is that what does platinum have to do with the comet? You know, platinums are high in asteroids, but they're not high in comets. Comets are icy bodies. I saw the paper, I read it. I think it's interesting, but I can't for the life of me figure out how he's correlating it. He has, in the different areas of the globus, he has platinum concentrations that are seemingly not matching up. They're outside the Younger Dryas. They're inside the Younger Dryas. I'd like you to show those.
Let's bring Malcolm.
It's hard to understand what he's trying to say. It doesn't refute the common hypothesis.
Let's bring Malcolm on, since he's one of the co-authors of the platinum paper.
This is going to get super complicated.
But let's try.
We can only do one caller at a time, apparently.
Well, I think Malcolm, should have his voice.
Well, I don't want to criticize him if he can't be here.
That's okay,
What I'd like
Mark.
to do is
He
go
can
back
be
and
here.
talk a little bit, if I may, about Göbekli Tepe, because I've read Schmidt. I know that Schmidt never ever found anything to suggest that there were anything in the early part of Göbekli Tepe that were not hunter-gatherers. They all were hunter-gatherers. You know, he found 20, I think, I may be wrong on this, but I think he found 22,000 stone tools there when he dug that place up.
I'm not disputing
He never
that.
found any domesticated animals. He never found any domesticated grain. He found tons of bones of animals. So we know that about 100 to 200 people were probably working on Göbekli Tepe at one time, and they were fed by wild animals and grain. So there's no reason to go out on a limb here and say that some magical civilization came in. And by the way, that's another thing that drives me crazy. You're saying that these guys were magicians. You're saying that they had secret knowledge. What possible secret knowledge did they give to the people at Göbekli Tepe? How can you possibly
Again,
say things like
I'm not
that?
saying that. The word magicians of the gods comes from the Apkallu in ancient Sumer. And they were considered to have superior powers, and they were considered to be magicians of a sort. Should I not report that because it's there in the Sumerian
No, I
text?
think you should tell us what Mike has been asking all day is what were their superpowers?
I'm not saying that they had superpowers. It's the Sumerians who said that. I simply report that. You can regard that as a cop-out if you like, but I am a
Why
fucking
did you call
reporter.
your book Magicians of the Gods?
Because that's the direct implication of the Apkallu. They were the magicians of the
It sounds
gods.
like you're saying they had magical powers to me.
No, I'm saying that they were the magicians of the gods as they were called in an ancient culture. That's all
Okay,
I'm
well, I
saying.
just want your audience to know that Schmidt, who worked there for 20 years, didn't go there for 2 days and look around, take some notes, and leave and write a book on it. He worked there for 20 years, and he found, with dates and everything, he found that there were hunter-gatherers there building those megaliths.
I don't
You know,
disagree.
if you went to Easter Island
Can I
and
speak?
you found the Moai, and you said, oh my gosh, there must have been some secret civilization that made these Moai because stupid hunter-gatherers couldn't possibly make these. Well, we know that there were no special people on Easter Island. It had to be made by hunter-gatherers. Why would you poo-poo the
Sorry, are you saying?
Göbekli Tepe and have to call a superior
Are
civilization
you
to do
serious?
that?
Are you seriously saying that the inhabitants of Easter Island were hunter-gatherers?
Well, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, we
So
can
on
see
that
the
little
population
island,
of the Pacific Ocean.
they had
We
no
know that
agriculture?
they
Are you
didn't
saying
get
that?
to the Pacific Ocean until about 1,000 years ago. I mean,
Hold on-
into
hold
Easter
on a
Island
second.
until about 1,000 years
Mark,
ago. What do you think they
hold
were?
on
They
a
certainly
second.
weren't a big civilization.
Mark,
Sorry.
please let him respond. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, did you meet Klaus Schmidt? Do you know him personally?
Well, you know he's dead, and
Yeah.
you know that I haven't met him.
Okay, well, I did meet him. I do know him personally.
I know you
I did record my interviews with him, with his agreement, and what he states clearly. I don't disagree with you that the people around Göbekli Tepe were hunter-gatherers when Göbekli Tepe was started. What precisely intrigued Klaus Schmidt was the possibility, his phrase not mine, that Göbekli Tepe was a center of innovation, a place where new ideas were deliberately seeded and spread out in the population. I have Klaus Schmidt on record saying that. I quote him saying that in my book, and that to me is a very interesting proposition because it suggests that we have a site here that is being used to mobilize a population and to transfer to them the knowledge of agriculture, which suddenly appears around Göbekli Tepe at the time that Göbekli Tepe is functioning.
What do you mean by sudden?
Can I add to that?
What I mean by suddenly is Klaus Schmidt stated very clearly that these are the people, the very same people who made Göbekli Tepe, in Klaus Schmidt's view, are the people who quote unquote invented agriculture.
If you don't mind me
And I would
interrupting here
agree.
for a second, what about Easter Island? Was Easter Island established by hunter-gatherers or not? You were saying not?
You say it was established by hunter-gatherers. I say not. I say Easter Island was an agricultural society. What's there to hunt and gather on a tiny island? Have you been to Easter Island? I have 6 times, and you know you can walk across it in 3 hours. What's there to hunt and gather on that?
Oh, no, you're misunderstanding my point. My
Oh,
point
they're
is
not.
that these are not sophisticated people.
Okay, but
I
sorry,
wanna
you
go
said-
back and
you
agree
s-
with you on Göbekli Tepe. I think that you've got Schmidt right. And in fact, it's a UNESCO site. We all recognize how important it is. But what I think Michael and I can't understand is how this ties into some magnificent civilization. There's nothing there that indicates that they were influenced by some other civilization.
Except
they started out as hunter-gatherers, and then they evolved into agricultural society, and that's what makes it a great site.
Can I answer you? You're seriously saying that there's nothing there? I mean, the largest megalithic site on Earth, 7,000 years older than Stonehenge is there. There's no background to it. No,
No,
evidence
wait a
of
minute.
practice or
Wait a
trade.
minute.
The megalithic site itself is the problem for me.
Okay, I honestly, we've got megaliths in quite a few sites. And by the way, you're right. There's a megalith just down the road from Göbekli Tepe, and there are probably several other. I can see them on maps.
Yeah, we need to get to the bottom of
We've got
this.
a wonderful amount of work to do there.
You bet.
So I think, Graham, we're in good agreement on this.
Okay, so
Sounds
you guys
like
are in
What I
agreement
want
on
to point
that.
out is that I don't think that there's any need to call upon this great civilization that you say exists.
Well, to me, the simplest explanation is a transfer of knowledge, a transfer of technology. I've been writing about the possibility of a lost civilization for more than a quarter of a century. That's what I do. I hope that it's a useful contribution to the debate. I mean, archaeologists can choose not to listen to anything I say, to dismiss me as a complete lunatic, as they often do, to accuse me, as you do in writing, of duping the public, of conning the public, and so on and so forth.
I didn't use the word conning.
Well, you did use the word conning.
Yo.
Actually, it's in the very last paragraph of your article, because I got it right here in front of me.
We will fix that.
You missed this. He discussed good so far. Yeah, it's really good. I like what's on, man. What is up, Stash?
Well, it's there. It's there.
Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Hold
Yeah,
on.
it's
Exact
good.
words. I am left with. What I am left with is that Hancock. I'm going to put my reading glasses on so I can read this properly. What I am left with, this is quoting you, Mark, is that Hancock has a real knack for conning a hellacious number of people into buying his books. I mean, that's
Well,
a
that's
direct
not right.
ad hominem insult.
But-
It's
but let
online
me-
in your article. Do you stand by it or not?
Listen, I apologize to you for the use of that language. Is that what you want to hear? Because I do.
But
I'm
why-
not-
why-
I'm
why-
not
I'm
sorry,
being
sorry,
a
I'm
nasty
sorry you
person.
used it
Come
in the
on,
first
like,
place. I
it's
think
just
you're
so
misleading your
dumb.
students.
It's
Why would you
too
say
dumb,
you're
guys.
just putting
I
that
hate this
online
stupid
for your
freaking
students as
strat.
if that's not a big
Like, you see
deal?
how fucking far
You're putting
down
it
the
on the
hall I got
internet.
boosted there? Like, it's
It's the
impossible
same,
to
you're
take
just
with
putting
that
it
stupid
online
fucking
for your
camera
students, and
photo.
You've been proven
Like,
incorrect on
what's
how
up,
many
man?
different times in this article now?
The reason why I'm
Say
so upset is because I tried this
I've
for
been
like half an
proven
hour when
you
it first
have.
came out, and
You
I
misquoted.
still
You
haven't
don't
taken one
give the
photo.
context
I'm
of
going to
it.
get
And
boosted.
even
Like,
Michael,
in 2012.
and even Michael has said that the skeptic
What the
article
fuck, man?
will not reflect these out of context statements that
what's
you're
up, bro?
making here.
Sorry, man.
Right, so the core is,
That was a good
is
run,
the
though.
impact hypothesis
That's why I'm so
likely to be
upset.
true or not, and
Whatever.
as an independent phenomenon, is it connected to Göbekli Tepe and the Younger Dryas? I mean, that's kind of what we're getting at. So
What's up, bro?
Right.
Yeah, man.
then we can, maybe you can explain that graph that shows all the glacial dam bursts and the dating of those
That
as
sucks.
thousands of years before the 12,800 year
Can we
impact.
put the map up first? We
I
need
mean,
the
I might
map
do a
up.
hybrid.
Get into,
Michael.
what is that?
I might do the hybrid.
Which map is that?
Which map?
On your article?
Where I do
Which map, Mark?
the 2.x ending,
I'm sorry, it's
but I
the glacial
pause
map.
after the fourth camera, honestly,
Western
or after the
Washington,
third
or
camera.
Washington State and Oregon.
Yeah, it sucks, man.
Okay.
Jamie will put
It
it up.
does suck.
And
Like, I wasn't
by the
even
way,
close.
I
Like,
should-
like,
to protect
I
Michael
was
here,
so far away.
I submitted this. Michael made immense amount of changes on that paper. I put it up because I wanted my students to
was-
see it. I had no idea that
So you
people would
can
go
take a
online
photo
and look
through
at
the
that.
kind of
Like,
half of
the
and-
wall.
And unfortunately, you've set
But I
tens
was
of thousands
friggin'
of
down the
people
hallway
probably
big
to it
time
by
there.
letting them
That's
know
why I
it's
like
on
pausing
here. I'm
there.
sorry
That's
for
why
that.
people
anyway, let's
usually
go to
pause
this
Why
there.
is it okay to just put that up online for your students?
Yeah, I don't
why
get that.
Why, how come you don't have any problem with that, but you do have a problem with it as it stands being released to the general public?
Well, you know,
I
maybe
I
he's looking
think
for
I
things
stand
that-
by everything I said, except for the personal comment at the end.
Well, we'll see
Okay,
if
so
that
let's take a look
survives
at
the
this
editing
map.
process.
Yeah, let's
Okay, let's put up this map.
get up back to the map.
Okay, the brown areas are, now, I have to emphasize that the Scablands is very famous. People have been working on, geologists have been working on this for more than 100 years, I bet, and very intricate, detailed mapping. And we now know what areas have been flooded. That's in the brown. The green areas are the old glacial lakes. One of them you can see is the Columbia Lake, and the other one on the far right, over in Montana, that's Lake Missoula. Now, I guess my point here is that you guys want to make the flooding out here to be immense, and I think Brett's original idea was that there was just one flooding, but then Brett's came to understand after looking at the data and all of the geologic work that it wasn't just one flood, that it's many floods, and that was the point of all of those dates that I show you. That there have been at least 17 specific floods dated. There are probably as many as 40 to 50 floods out there, and they're all probably related to glacial dams breaking. Now, where in the world would you ever say that this small area relative to an entire continent, why would you say that this is evidence for a comet strike. Not even the comet guys are saying that this flooding out here is related to a comet, because there are a large number of area, a very small number of actual area that is flooded. If you take a look now at my dates, or not my dates, but the dates, do you have that, Michael? The one with...
Yeah, we're going to bring that up, but let's let Randall Carlson address you
Sure.
now, because he's the one that's the expert of this.
I mean, he's got a point that if you just look at, if you confine your examination to this area, but the point is you've got evidence of mega flooding all around the ice sheet margin, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. You've got the work of Keyhue and Lord in the Midwestern states, South Dakota, North Dakota, eastern Montana. You've got massive spillways out there that discharged off the ice sheet. You have Glacial River Warren that was undoubtedly formed by most likely Glacial Lake Agassiz, and you've got the St. Croix River, where I took Graham a couple of years ago, that had mega floods down it. There were mega floods down the Mississippi River. There was Glacial Lake Wisconsin that discharged down the Wisconsin River, left the Wisconsin dells. There are the Finger Lakes in New York that probably were created by massive floods emanating off of that.
No, they were scoured.
Scoured, exactly, right. They were scoured, and they were probably scoured by subglacial floods that were coming under high pressure. Because, you know, you have the drumlin fields that are just to the south of them. And you've probably seen the work of John Shaw and
Yes.
Claire Beanie and Bruce Rainey and those out of Canada.
Yes, but I think Shaw's idea about drumlins is crazy.
Well, why would that be? How do you propose the drumlins then were formed?
Oh, easily. The glaciers came forward and topped to the...
Like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to take this photo. Like, it's impossible. Wow, it actually worked?
Moraines out into drumlins.
Wow, see, I actually was able to take the photo there incredibly. So that was a 23.
Totally fluvially produced. They look like inverted boat-hills. You look at the
I didn't even do the whatever
how does
ending.
glaciers create internal stratification? I've looked at numerous drumlins in Canada. I've looked at drumlins in New York State.
Maybe it is
I've looked at drumlins
friggin' way
in
faster.
probably a dozen different places. And where you can see exposures, you see stratification. You don't see, if glaciers are grinding over a deformable substrate, how is it that they produce anything other than a chaotic jumble of glacial till? You can actually see layering.
Well,
I've seen it
right.
myself, and we can pull up pictures of it here in a minute. I'd like for you to explain to
before you
me.
do that, because I'm not disagreeing with you.
Okay.
I think I gotta do it, Stash. That was like really fast.
I think we're getting kind of technical for this audience, but you know, an estimate.
Oh, I didn't
is
pause the
something that's
second time. I'll have to
stratified,
pause the
not a
second time. I have to.
So you're misidentifying them as drumlins.
No, I am
I have
not
to pause the second time.
misidentifying drumlins. I know very clearly the difference between an esker and a drumlin. I've looked at many eskers. I've hiked on them. I've flown over them in airplanes.
The Finger Lakes are gouged.
They are gouged, yes. Are they gouged by glaciers, or are they also gouged by subglacial megafloods? That's the question, and I think that's a fair question to ask. And if we look at some of the studies, we find out that the depositional material in them is massive. It's not stratified, it's massive, as if it was dumped in there over a very short period of time.
Let me go back to the bigger picture.
But hold on a second. What's your point about that?
Sorry, Joe, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Respond to that, what he just said.
What am I responding to? Look, we're going to have to disagree. I mean, what am I supposed to argue? I don't want to get in an argument with him here. He thinks that they're done by water. I think that traditionally, the way most geologists see the Finger Lakes is they're gouged out. They're parallel to one another. If he thinks it's water, okay, what can we do? We can disagree, I guess.
Well,
let me go back up to the main glacier, the Laurentide Glacier. Wally Broker suggested in the 90s that water potentially was changed from flowing down the Mississippi Valley into the Atlantic or the Arctic. No one has been able to find any evidence of flooding towards the Atlantic or the Arctic. So when you say there are all kinds of evidence of flooding up there, Wally Broker backed off of his of his theory because we couldn't find any flooding.
What he backed off of was the idea that the draining of glacial Lake Agassiz triggered the Younger Dryas, because
Look.
the dating of the draining of glacial Lake Agassiz was post Younger Dryas, and so that's what he backed off of. He didn't necessarily back up. Look, we know that there were somewhere
the
around.
moraines have been carefully, they've been carefully mapped. You can watch the Laurentide Glacier move back moraine after moraine, and there are no holes in that moraine that suggest flooding. There's no change in the lake level of Lake Agassiz. There's no evidence there, Randall, for flooding. You've got it wrong. If you look at the mapping, the careful mapping that the geologists have done.
You've just said that there was no change in the level of Lake Agassiz. How is that possible? I mean, as the ice receded, the glacial Lake Agassiz expanded, and at some point it finally breached right there by Big Stone Lake in Minnesota, and basically carved out the Minnesota River Valley, which geological studies have confirmed. They call River Warren, and have confirmed that essentially it was carrying its peak discharge was roughly 4,000 times greater than the modern Minnesota River that flows there. And where did that end up? That flowed into the Mississippi. The Mississippi then conveyed that water into the Gulf of Mexico and deposited huge amounts of delta material that New Orleans is built on now.
You know, you're trying to make a flood where a flood isn't. There's a difference between a glacier melting, which causes a lot of water, and a comet striking it, which creates copious amounts of water. I think you guys referred to it the last time as a tsunami. There's no evidence of a tsunami in North America.
Have you been?
And by the way, here's another question: Why are you guys talking about North America when your Atlantis is supposed to be in Egypt? Or you guys have run around, you found some evidence of flooding in North America, and somehow this relates to destruction of Atlantis and some lost civilization.
Well, that's
in
not
some
Randall.
other
Hold on,
country.
hold on.
That's not what I'm talking about
That's not
right
Randall.
now. I'm not talking about that. We know there was a Fennoscandian ice sheet. We know there was a Cordilleran ice sheet. We know there was a Laurentide ice sheet. We know they all melted. We know that there was somewhere around 6 million cubic miles of ice wrapped up in those ice sheets at the end of at the late glacial maximum. They're all gone now. They had to melt. That was an enormous amount of water. And I don't know if you have been out to the Scablands. I've been going back to the Scablands and the area of glacial Lake Missoula since 1970. I've been across that thing 60,000 miles back and forth. I have over 10,000 photographs of the material in the field, and I can tell you those floods were enormous. They were beyond.
Yeah, you're cherry picking. Look at the map. You've shown some pictures. You know, we can measure those current ripple marks that you show. We can measure how much water went over them. All you have to do is measure the current ripples.
You can go into Camas Prairie, and you've got a current ripple field there that is about 7 miles long.
I know it very well.
Oh my God.
And the high water mark in there is at 4,200 feet above sea level. The floor of Camas Prairie is just 1,400 feet lower than that. So we know that there were 1,400 feet of water that passed through Camas Prairie and down into the Flathead River.
No,
we don't. Well,
because
then
you're
are
not
you
considering-
Yeah,
disregarding?
but that was
are you
27.
disregarding the
Like,
high
it's
water
a
mark?
dumb
From the bottom of the
strat. I
canyon
don't
to
like
the
it.
top of the canyon is not what it was
don't
when the
like
water
it.
first started
Might just
flowing
too
in
old
that area.
strat.
You can't take the bottom of the canyon and say, oh, there must have been 4,000 feet of water here.
I'm not talking about a canyon. I'm talking about Camas Prairie Basin, which is not a canyon. It's a basin.
Well, it had to erode at one time.
Well, most of the material in there was washed in. So, I mean, we don't know how much it would have eroded until somebody does some core samples to get down to something that can be dated to earlier, than the late glacial maximum. But the floor of Camas Prairie is thick layers of very coarse gravel, boulders, and this is what composes the current ripples that you see there. I mean, I don't see how you can look at those current ripples that are sometimes 40 and 50 feet in amplitude with 200 and 300 feet chord lengths and say that wasn't a catastrophic flow. Maybe it wasn't.
It was a catastrophic flood, but it wasn't like a tsunami.
Well,
it
then
wasn't
how would
like
you
comets hit
characterize
there
it?
and we can play this game.
Are you
but
saying
there are every geologist on the planet practically says that there were about 40 different floods until you came along.
You're obviously not familiar. You're
not
not familiar with the work then of Victor Baker or Russell Bunker or a number of others that have challenged the 40 floods hypothesis. And are you going to tell me that those current ripples in Camas Prairie are created, they're the product of 40 separate floods?
Come on.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, when you showed one of your pictures, I could see the flow changes in that. Oh, don't give me the you're incredulous
God,
stuff.
I hate this
I'm
stupid
sorry,
strat.
this
I
doesn't
hate
mean
this
you're
strat.
right.
You do the incredulous all the time, Mark.
Well,
Well, that's because you say some pretty incredulous things,
40
Graham.
floods created the Camas Prairie. That's what you're saying. That's the product of 40 separate floods. Those
I
current
don't know
ripples.
how many floods have been in there. I know that there are. They're counting them, and I last read something to the effect of 40, somewhere around.
Yeah,
there.
that's based on the work of Richard Waite. Goes back to the early 80s, and I think he's got.
No, go to his graph. Can we go to his graph?
Which graph is this, Mark?
It's the one right below the map.
Yeah, this one.
It's the dating of the floods.
Here we go.
Look,
We're at that right now.
Randall, I think hopefully we're disagreeing as comrades here rather
I
than
think
as
so.
fighting
Yeah,
each other.
I mean,
I'm just trying to give you some data here. Look at those. Those are Missoula floods, Lake Missoula. He's got them dated, and you're seeing the dates. He's got standard deviations, 1 and 2 standard deviations on the median there.
Okay, that
So
worked.
we've got
Okay, that
these
worked.
things pinned by multiple
We gotta
carbon
pause again,
dates.
though.
The little bell curves there show how many carbon dates he's
So-
got.
like, it's just
and you can
terrible.
see that these are documented very, very well.
Yes.
So I don't understand why you're so opposed to multiple floods. In fact, I heard in the last time you guys were on this show, I heard you say that you thought there were multiple floods. Now you're trying to argue against that idea.
I
What's going
am
on?
not. I still think there were multiple floods. I think we have to look at 2 distinct regimes of floods, though. And as far as the radiocarbon dating, the thing we have to be really careful of is that floods will entrain older sediment. And in that older sediment, there could be radiocarbon dated material that doesn't really date the time of the flood, but was excavated by the flood, entrained into flood waters, and then redeposited. So, you know, that's a major problem with radiocarbon dating anytime you look at flood sediments. And I do believe there were multiple floods. That's, you know, I think it's a misinterpretation to think that I only think that there was one flood. But there, you know, the problem is here, I think we're colleagues, and my approach to this is just like, you know, in the MMA when 2 guys get out there and try to beat the crap out of each other, and then at the end of it they give each other a hug. That's kind of where I'm coming from. So, you know, there's nothing personal
I'm sorry
here.
we couldn't give each other a hug, but I feel the same way. And by the way, you guys are very bright and very knowledgeable.
Well, you know, I really value this because I'm looking for holes in this idea, very much so. And I have done some serious thinking about this over many years, and I have interviewed most of the geologists that have worked on it. I've been in half a dozen field trips guided by the main geologists that have worked on this, and they had a chance to dialogue with them. And you know, I'm convinced that, you know, there's a lot to be learned about this, and I think we need to be looking at, like you said, the big picture. And you know, we could get back to a discussion of the Finger Lakes and how they formed. I think that's important. I think we could get back to a discussion about drumlins and how they formed. You know, there is studies on the Valley Heads mooring that are at the south end of the Finger Lakes that have I can't think of who did it right now. I could pull it up, but basically said it's water deposited. But there's a lot of unresolved issues about what happened during this planetary transition out of the last ice age. And I think it's important that we have these discussions, that we have these dialogues, and that we try to get to the bottom of what actually happened without, you know, imposing too many preconceptions upon our models, because I think we're looking at something very unprecedented here.
Randall, I couldn't have said that better. It was very well articulated. Let me go back to the big picture, if I could, just for a minute, because I want us to address something that Graham said earlier, and that is that Graham seems to have this idea that comets break up all the time, but people that understand I think comets and meteorites understand that the comet Schumer-Levy or whatever it was that broke up.
Schumacher-Levy 9.
It broke up because of the gravitation of Jupiter. We would not expect these comets to break up entering into the atmosphere. It's one of the problems that the comet people have had. Firestone once suggested a 4-kilometer-wide comet striking them. Now they've broken it up into multiple comets. The problem is you can't get it separated. If a comet breaks up, it's very hard to separate it so that it hits in multiple places. And so this is a big picture kind of problem that the comet people are having with the scientists. So you may be able to get it to hit the North American ice sheet, but I'm telling you that the studies are showing that you're not going to be able to do this without leaving some marks. And so far, nobody's been able to find a crater. Do you know that they're suggesting that a 4-kilometer comet, if it could break up, it would generate 1 million meteor craters? You know how big that was? That was 49,000 years ago. We don't see that in the climate record. 49,000 years ago, we should see it. We don't see it. It's barely a little thing.
Malcolm Lecomte has been standing.
Have to have a huge comet strike.
Malcolm Lecomte has been standing by for the best part of 3 hours. Since he's a member of the Comet Research Group, it would be a good time to bring him on.
Yeah, we can bring him on as long as Mark is satisfied that he said his piece. But unfortunately, Mark, we can't have 2 people on the phone at the same time.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you having me on, Joe.
I appreciate you coming on, too, and I'm glad you guys, especially you and Randall, seem to have ironed out a lot of your ideas.
Well,
I think
Randall's a great guy.
There's a lot to be learned here, obviously, and there's a lot that already has been learned, and this is an unbelievably fascinating subject. And I think oftentimes when these debates get heated, a lot gets lost in who's wrong or who's right. But I think what we can all agree on is that what we're dealing with is an unbelievable point in history, in the history of this planet. And trying to figure out what caused it and why is some really fascinating stuff. So, Mark, I really appreciate your time and really appreciate you imparting your knowledge on us. And
Mark, if at all possible, I would love to kind of keep some of this dialogue going because I really would value your input.
I tried to write you, Randall, and I couldn't get through. I'm not sure why.
I'm
we'll
not either,
connect you
because if I
guys.
would have seen that, I definitely would have responded. So
Well,
I'll
I
hook
have a
you up.
website. Please send me. I'd love to keep
I will.
up with
We'll
it.
definitely connect you guys after this is over. And thank you once again, Mark. Really, really appreciate you
Mark,
calling in.
if I could just say, I do hope you'll revisit your article and just have a look at the context in which you present me there.
Absolutely. Never meant to insult you.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Okay. Now, we are going to call caller number 2. This is it's a fascinating podcast, though. And your friend who's waiting is
Malcolm Lecomte. He's one of the Comet Research Group scientists. This is a large and diverse body of scientists who come at the material with different expertise and different areas of knowledge. It happens that Malcolm is a co-author of the recent, I regard it, highly significant paper, Finding a Platinum Anomaly Across North America. And I would hope he might begin with addressing why that might indicate a comet impact.
right. Is Malcolm on?
You should be. Malcolm, can you hear us?
I can hear. Can you hear me?
Excellent. How are you, Malcolm? Thank you very much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
So, give us your thoughts on what Graham just said, if you would, as to why it makes sense that it was a comet that hit, and why there would be these large deposits of these. What was it exactly?
Well, platinum in
and
the recent paper, but Malcolm is also an expert in magnetic microspherules, and I think he can address
Okay.
that issue as well.
And-
The whole range of proxies, of impact proxies.
Now, Malcolm, please just give us your thoughts on this entire phenomenon, if you would.
I will. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Is he breaking up?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
I think there's an issue. Seems to be a
Yeah.
bit. Can you hear?
I know what's going on. I've got a feedback. I've got to turn off this.
Okay.
Oh yeah, you gotta mute that other video.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. You're listening to us at the same time as talking to us. Yeah, you're gonna
Right.
you're getting us on like a 40-second delay or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, we cool now?
Actually, I was very interested to hear Mark's his initial statement kind of put me off, but his subsequent statements I thought were pretty accurate. And there are many problems with the hypothesis that there was an impact, and that's the way I consider it. I don't really think in terms of a comet impact. I think in terms of an extraterrestrial impact, because I don't think we've proven a comet impact. I don't think I don't think we know what kind of an impact it was. There's too many questions that have to be answered. So I can't sign up to say that I'm defending the comet impact hypothesis because
No, it's
I
too
don't frankly
slow,
know what
man.
it was. We have a
And
lot
it's
of
just
evidence
too-
that appears
it's
to be
just too
extraterrestrial
troll.
in nature.
It's too slow
We
and
have
too
magnetic
troll.
microspherules. I can give you the most frequent criticism we get is that the evidence has not been replicated. And that's where I thought Mark was going when his initial statement was that the comet impact hypothesis has been debunked. And I think what he meant was, if I can speak for him, was that the fact that it was a comet has been debunked. I don't think that's necessarily true yet. It just isn't indicated that it was a comet. We have indications that it was more of an asteroid hit than anything else. And I could conceive of a rubble pile that somehow became disassociated, although there'd have to be a mechanism or a model for that, and I don't think we have a model for that. Asteroids come in many flavors, and rubble piles are certainly one. Loose aggregates of material that could become separated, possibly, but I just don't know at this stage. I guess the biggest criticism that we faced in terms of the impact hypothesis is that the evidence has not been replicable, and we now have, I guess, three or four evidence lines that have been replicated by numerous independent groups. If you look at the nanodiamonds, which may be the most controversial of the bunch of the evidence lines, that's been replicated by 4 different groups, independent, 5 different studies. The magnetic microspherules, which were initially treated very hostilely because they didn't understand what we were talking about. And some of that was a self-inflicted wound on the part of the initial study, which didn't show what we really were finding. And that's been corrected, and yet the same objection or criticism is being made. Magnetic microspherules are typically they're melted and then they're quenched. They're subjected to high temperatures, and then those temperatures are rapidly reduced, which is sort of
That was
accepted.
a Hail Mary fucking shot. Too bad I
So we've got
missed that.
evidence of an
That's
impact,
fine.
and that's been replicated by 10 different independent groups, and including many of the same sites that were originally disputed. So then the disputation has been largely based upon the failure to do the most basic part of the protocol, which is to do the scanning electron microscopic analysis of the spherules. Okay, that is the microspherules and the nanodiamonds. The other is the discovery of platinum, iridium, or osmium, which are the platinum group elements, which are characteristic of an asteroid impact. And we found some evidence of iridium, not a lot, but there have been certain sites that are rich in iridium and once again, this is at the younger Dryas boundary, not above, not below. It's there at that boundary. So that date seems to be pretty solid.
And iridium is indicative of an impact of extraterrestrial origin, correct?
That's correct. The platinum is simply just another more plentiful platinum group element. Obviously, that's why they're called the platinum groups. Osmium is one that is usually associated with iridium. There are now 11 studies by independent groups that have confirmed the occurrence of platinum, osmium, or iridium. So it looks to me like the evidence is piling up. The most recent one, of course, is the
what's
platinum
up, bro?
study by Moore that just came
I don't
out,
know. That's a good question.
a few months ago.
Now, Randall Carlson just, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Randall Carlson just had us pull up some images that we're looking at. Randall, please explain what this is.
It's a very good
This
question.
is from
I have no idea.
Malcolm's 2012 independent evaluation of conflicting microspheral results from different investigations. This is his supplementary information figure 4. So it's just so that the people watching this can actually see what you're talking about when you're discussing the rapid quenching effect on the surface of the microspherals. So we've got up on the screen here supplementary information figure 4, where you've got the microspherals from Topper, Blackwater Draw, and Pawpaw Cove. So just so people can see what that surface texture looks like.
Yeah, you see these,
That's a
they
good
look
question.
like leaf-like structures across, some of them are harder to see, but they're there. You see the original image, it's large enough and clear enough to actually see these, what we call dendritic structures, or
I need a chat
like a
GPT
carpet, weave.
Google
Those are
response
essentially truncated crystallization.
bot.
It's a crystallization process that's
Yo,
quenched.
what's up?
I'm not a geologist,
Elusive Booth doesn't actually come
geologists
from
trying to
Earth,
explain it
man.
to me. And that's what I'm trying to do
2000
here.
IQ into the
But,
chat.
The fact that these are enhanced,
boost.
these things are quite enhanced
Interesting,
at
man.
the Everdryas and really depleted.
Is it
above
what
and
is it?
below.
Iridium? Is it an element?
Now there are spherules throughout the column. Any column of soil.
Is it some sort
when
of
you
like
go
metal
down
alloy?
vertically, deeper.
Is
you
it
find
a
spherules? But those spherules are typically what we call orthogenic, which means that they're created
What's
by
it called?
terrestrial processes. You need to do a scanning electron
Ion?
microscope and X-ray dispersive spectroscopy to differentiate those from
metal?
the
Element.
terrestrial
Cool,
processes
thanks,
that
bro.
are producing these things.
Yeah, your figure 5
Thanks a lot.
has a framboidal spheral, which is probably what you're talking about. If you could go to slide 113, Jamie, and you'll be able to see, yeah, there it
Anything
is. You
above
can see
iron
it's
is
very
from
distinct
supernova.
difference. So we've got your figure 5 up on the screen now, Malcolm.
Wow, insane.
The
Yeah,
scanning
that's a
elect-
typical framboid, and
Yeah.
they're
Really?
when you look at an optical microscope, they look just like or very much like
Wow,
the,
this is really interesting, bros.
Yo,
what up, Joe Jr.?
And they occur much more frequently. I mean, I've got sites that have tens of thousands of these things in every couple of centimeters of sediment.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
You've got to separate the impact spherules or the
Platinum.
magnetic microspherules from these things.
But what you appear to be saying,
You know what's
Malcolm,
interesting,
is that there's an
Hideyoshi?
abundance of impact proxy evidence, which, in your opinion, adds up to a cosmic impact
In
of some sort,
Ontario,
not necessarily
they're
a comet. You're
mining
suggesting an asteroid. It's a
in
mysterious
northern
event in that
Ontario,
sense, but what it adds up to is an impact. in your view.
dilithium
Is that a
oxide
fair-
crystals
All these
summary?
what we call proxies,
for
the impact spherules,
battery
the,
plant.
platinum group elements,
So they're
the,
literally mining
the melt
dilithium
blast, which I haven't
crystals
discussed
for
yet,
energy.
and the
And I'm thinking,
nanoparticles
dude,
are
this is
enhanced,
like
and the enhancement has
so
been
Star Trek.
replicated on numerous occasions for each of these proxies.
So anyone who
And-
says that
In
the work of you
dilithium
and your
oxide
team has been completely debunked
crystals.
is clearly not completely familiar with the literature. Then.
It's like
That would
shit's just
seem to
getting
be
too
the
real,
case.
man.
That we're disingenuous in that regard.
I'm thinking
So
diamonds.
I would say that
I think what's out there in space
because
that
typically
we
what we
haven't
see is that
seen.
the
Yeah,
opposition literature does not cite the
Well,
studies
dudes,
that have come
dudes.
out.
I have I have a meteorite here, right? I have a meteorite beside me here. I'll show it on camera. I put a YouTube video on it. It's on my YouTube channel if you want to see it.
And that's a habit I wish they would share.
you were here,
Stash,
Could you go
That
to
hasn't been the case.
slide 82?
It would be nice if
From
we could have had
Argentina,
you on
from
with
the
Mark so you
Campos
guys could exchange information, but
Grande.
unfortunately our capabilities that we can only take one phone call at a time. We will definitely try to update that for the new studio, although we never anticipated this was going to happen in the first place. But it's been
All right.
awesome. Oh, there we go.
Up on the screen, Malcolm, we've got from Ted Bunch et al. 2012 very high temperature impact melt products as evidence for cosmic airbursts and impacts 12,900 years ago. So we have figure from supplementary information 6, the light photomicrographs of magnetic and glassy spherules from Melrose, Pennsylvania. And it shows the wide variety of shapes, which includes spherules, ovals, teardrops, and dumbbells. And I think, so you can see pretty distinctly what you're talking about here with the glassy spherules. And then,
Nice rock,
like
thanks.
particularly,
It's
I'm not sure if you were
nickel
co-author
iron,
of
I
this
think.
paper or not.
I was not.
You were not. Okay. Are you familiar
20
with
grams.
that
I
paper?
think I
Do you
paid
know the
$50
image?
for
Good,
this.
okay. Yeah, it shows some very interesting, teardrop shapes, dumbbell shapes, and where you can actually see that, like dumbbell H up there consists of two
What was I gonna
dissimilar
say? Yeah,
accretionary
I don't know.
spherules,
That's
one clear
interesting, dude.
silicon-rich and the
Because
other
a lot of
opaque iron-rich that have
asteroids
been
are
fused together, and
like
that's
mined,
pretty
right?
convincing
Like the
evidence
Sudbury
of the
Basin
energy that's involved
in
these
Canada.
phenomena, that you actually have these fused spherules like this. And then, Jamie, if you go down to the next image, which is a scanning electron microscope images comparing younger Gyges boundary spherules on the top row with known impact spherules on the bottom row. This is a very interesting comparison because, and you've probably seen this one, Malcolm.
Impact heights, cool, bro.
There's 3 across the top, 3 across the bottom,
Definitely
and
very
A
cool.
is actually from Knudson's farm in Canada. It's a Cretaceous Tertiary boundary spheral, and just below it is a younger Dryas spheral from Lake Cutzio in Mexico, and one can see the morphological similarity of the two quite clearly. Then C and D compares. C is a spheral from the Tunguska airburst.
Congrats, Joseph.
And then D is younger Dryas
That's
boundary
hilarious,
from
Joseph.
Lingen,
Oh my
Germany,
gosh.
which dates to 12,800 years before present.
That name,
and here you
dude.
can see very clearly the rapid quench melt texture on the surface between the two, comparing Tunguska airburst with
Lightly radioactive. That's
a
what
younger
Toad was
Dryas
saying,
boundary
man.
object.
That's why he
And
said
then
keep it away
finally,
from
E
your
and F,
friggin'
we have an iron calcium silica spheral from
From
Meteor
your
Crater
bedside.
compared with an iron calcium
4 hours,
silica
nice, man.
younger Dryas boundary
Congrats, dude.
spheral from Abu Haria, Syria. And again, in each of these cases, you can see the similarities between
Can you
the
imagine?
different types of objects. So
It's
you have these
radioactive.
3 objects which come from that
That'd be
younger
so
Dryas
dumb.
boundary layer, all which have morphological similarity to known impact proxies. And this is very difficult to dismiss this as being mere coincidence.
Yeah, I would agree. And those are very, especially the
Sick,
AC,
dude. Let me
B,
give me a
D,
sec, 1 sec.
pictures are very similar to the
ASMR
material I'm
water
taking out of
breaks.
the younger
Speaking
Dryas
of
boundary at the
ASMR.
sites that I've been looking at.
1 sec.
Malcolm, what evidence, if any, are you aware of about what is that nuclear glass material called? Trinitite. That's how you say it. What,
Yeah.
from what I understand, there's quite a bit of that also appears in the same time period in the core samples.
There are some instances of it, but I wouldn't say quite a bit. Some of these, I mean, they're very site-specific, and one of the things I've been trying to do is work my way closer and closer to Canada to see if there's any truth to this whole idea that the primary impact site was Canada. So I've been trying to look at sites closer and closer, and I've seen sites in New Jersey. This would be Eastern Canada. I've seen sites in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania that produce what appears to be some form of trinitite or melt glass, or what Ted Bunch would call scoria-like objects. And it seems to bear out that at least that far, we're getting richer material out of the sediment, out of the younger Dryas boundary sediment.
And is this trinitite, this material, only produced in this manner, or it's also produced through a nuclear explosion test, right? But other than that, is this the only way that it's produced on Earth?
Well, an impact would do it, or a fulgurite could do it. A fulgurite is what's produced by a lightning strike. Could produce spherules. It could produce all the high temperature products that you see in an impact, but in a very limited way. You wouldn't expect to see it in a layer unless there was some sort of global lightning storm. What I was going to say about the melt glass is that in the material we're looking at, you see evidence of melted zircons, melted chromite, all of which are very high temperature features, indicating a very high temperature that was experienced by that particular object.
Are you seeing the image we have up here?
Yes, I am.
Oh, great. Okay, good. Yeah, there A is from Meteor Crater and B is from the Trinity nuclear test. So, and then with the 22 kiloton yield, and then C is from one of the Soviet era nuclear tests. and D is again a scoria-like object from Abu Hurriya. So
Yeah.
so, and then if we go to let's see,
You gotta love that it says Stalinite.
yeah, go,
Yeah. The
Jamie.
scoria-like objects, the melt blast or scoria-like objects has only been found in about half a dozen sites to this point. So we're still, and I think it's a matter of how close you are to an impact point. And if they're very far apart, that would lend credence, I think, to this idea of multiple impacts. If they seem to be get more, more plentiful as you get further and further north, then maybe there's more legitimacy to a primary impact site. Right now, we just don't know. We're still working that out.
All right, we got another nice slide from the Bunch article here.
Beautiful slide.
Yeah,
That's
calcium
a good
oxide,
slide.
rich scoria-like object created by the melting of carbonate and silica-rich precursor rocks. The yellow area is the calcium oxide, the white area is Le Chatelierite, and dark areas are iron oxide. So that's a really nice.
Yeah, let you tell you right.
Yeah, I've been struggling with getting that pronunciation down. And then, Jamie, if you go to the next one, we will see there's a scoria-like object from Meteor Crater, Arizona, and you could toggle back and forth between the two so that people can kind of see the similarity between them.
And I see a lot. That's when in the sites that produce melt blasts, that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Those two types of particulates.
And how much of this material are you finding in these sites?
Well, you don't find. I have to say, you don't find a lot of this material. It's a struggle to get it, but what you don't find is anything above or below it, that particular layer. Unless you know that it's been a very dynamic environment, in which case it can be spread out in the soil column.
And what's the implication of nothing above it and below it?
Well, that you've got a specific date for it, and the layer that we typically try and just limit our investigation to layers that have been dated to the Amber-Dryas boundary or contain the Amber-Dryas boundary layer.
Right.
But like I say, if you have a very dynamic environment, it can really screw things up. It can be very difficult to interpret.
So this
If
is
you've got a lot
difficult,
of flooding, repetitive flooding.
difficult science to do.
Say again?
This is difficult science to do.
Yeah, and I should add there that proving an impact is not easy. It takes a while, and it just as proving an impact crater is not easy. As I'm sure Mark would agree, that you find a crater, there's no guarantee that it's either an impact event or a volcanic event until you do the research and spend the time to investigate it.
But if you could summarize for us, what's your opinion now on the balance of the evidence, always bearing in mind that you may change that opinion as more evidence comes in?
Yeah, I would say we're facing an unprecedented type of event here that appears to have been something approaching global. I mean, we've got evidence now in South America. We've got evidence, and a lot of this stuff is unpublished. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could bring up that aren't published, so that it's kind of useless to refer to them because there's no way of checking what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But we're seeing stuff that goes very far into South America. And we're seeing things in Syria. We haven't looked elsewhere. We've seen it out in the Pacific Ocean. We've seen it in Europe. So, I mean, where does it end?
And
right now, we haven't found an end to it yet.
And it's all at the Younger-Dryas boundary.
That's correct.
Yeah.
What have you found in the
I
Pacific
gotta catch up on this reading. I'm gonna read it all. I swear.
Well, Sharma has found. There's a paper I can cite from his may even be just a presentation. I can quote it. He says, "We infer that the Central Pacific was a site of deposition of osmium resulting from dust cloud following a meteorite impact of 12,000 kiloatoms plus or minus 4,000. So right in that ballpark, Sharma says that he found osmium, and I believe he's come up with microspherules from that same.
Yo, Baron.
But so the Central
Maybe
Pacific
not,
is an idea
man.
that gives you an idea of how
granite
extensive
ones.
this thing was.
Now, Malcolm, this is
colossi
obviously some
of
controversial
Memnon.
material. It's fairly new in terms of the public consciousness. Have you had anybody debate you on this, or have you had anybody oppose you?
Yeah, it goes with the territory. I wish the opposition, in some respects, in some cases, I wish the opposition was of a bit higher caliber than what I've seen. I think it's been a sad state that the most virulent opposition has not, I haven't regarded as particularly high quality.
Malcolm, Michael Shermer here. Just do you have an opinion on the association of the impact with the megafauna extinction, and also then Graham's hypothesis about the extinction of this lost civilization?
I won't even comment on the lost civilization aspects of this. I have a hard enough time dealing with the meteorite impact. As far as the megafauna goes, I think that I guess I would say all of the above. I think that all these factors came into play. You've got humans who are, for that period, technologically advanced with the Clovis point and the atlatl and the spear, the replaceable spear tip that must have been devastating to the fauna. But the idea of attacking a proboscidean to me is almost unthinkable. I mean, those things are, today, if you don't have a high-powered rifle, I just don't see how you realistically go up against a bull elephant. I mean, it just strikes me as far too dangerous to take on. But there are aspects of that question that I think are going to be very, very interestingly debated in the next couple of years or so. We have a book coming out that addresses that directly at one of the sites I've been researching, that the whole extinction of the megafauna may have been as much related to religion as something else. There may have been a religion built around the extinction of the megafauna.
How so?
You'd want the evidence for that, and that evidence will be coming out in a book, and that's going to be published in about a month or two.
I could speak to the whole idea of hunting bull elephants, though, unfortunately. People have been hunting them with bows and arrows forever. It's not an atlatl. Atlatl is less effective. You get less range, but people hunt with not just modern compound bows, which are very powerful, which would allow you to shoot it from 100 yards away, but with long bows. They've been hunting elephants with bows and arrows for a long time. Especially the thing with woolly mammoths was that they would go after the females, apparently, according to Dan Flores, who wrote American Serengeti, and that the females would keep the young in their body. Their gestation period was very long. Like, I believe he said it was 2 years. Is that correct? I think he said it was 2 years. And so it made them extremely vulnerable. When they were pregnant, obviously if you kill off the females that are pregnant, you're killing off a substantial part of the breeding population, and the population suffers tremendously. So that was one, but it also could have been that end. That humans, I'm sure, had an impact on virtually anything that we could eat when we were starving. But whether or not we wipe them out, the Blitzkrieg hypothesis, there's a lot of holes in that theory, according to a lot of people that have studied it.
Well, I think if you have an environmental impact or a degradation of the environment that might follow a significant impact, extraterrestrial impact, so you're reducing the population or stressing the population of megafauna that way, and then you've got a population of hunters, especially if they're, for some reason or other, focused on hunting proboscideans, and when the number gets limited, they don't care whether it's a female or a male, and they go after whatever they can get, then I think the population of megafauna is going to suffer. So I think it's a combination of factors, not necessarily just one.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. Malcolm, is there anything else that you would like to add before we let you go?
No, I guess one thing is I found it interesting in the discussion of the scablands, and that was really, it was looking at the scablands from flying over them when I was a young naval officer that got me interested in science and why I pursued science. It was looking at the catastrophes that were etched in the landscape there, the catastrophic floods that really caused me to pursue a career in science. It's really a remarkable landscape. It's just a personal observation.
Well, we're very, very thankful for your time, and we really, really appreciate your input here, and it means a lot. And thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for everything that you continue to do to highlight this. It is such a fascinating subject, and it's so amazing, and it's just, without someone like you presenting hard data in science, it would definitely be lost. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, Malcolm.
All right, Malcolm, we're going to let you go.
Okay.
Take it easy, buddy. Sound down.
Time for your nap, Malcolm.
It's a lot of energy. So these podcasts are long. I mean, 4 hours. The guy was sitting there on standby, probably, chomping at the bit. Jamie, before we go, I want to see some pictures of the scablands because that is pretty amazing stuff. And Randall, one more thing before we go. One thing that you pointed out to me during one of the episodes that was so stunning was these woolly mammoths that had been literally knocked over by an impact with broken legs and that died on the spot. Do you have those images?
I do. That was actually a mastodon.
Mastodon, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see those. So let's go to the scablands first so we can show the audience on YouTube, which is, by the way, only about 10% of the people that watch this. So if you're listening to this, go check out the scablands on Google, and you can see this.
Oh my God!
Describe it to us, Randall.
Well, this is textbook scabland right here. Let's see what this is. Probably Rock Lake or Sprague Lake in the Cheney-Palouse scablands. Yeah, you see the potholes there. That's a sign of turbulence, extreme turbulence within the water. Hulking is what the process is called, where it's so turbulent that it actually produces vortexes, high-intensity vortex motion in the water. It'll pick up sediment, and then it can drill its way right into the bedrock. Going down there, that's Palouse Falls, which that's an underfit waterfall, because what you have to realize is that at the peak of the flooding, this entire scene was submerged below water, and the cataract here is an extinct feature, and the flow over here was thousands of times greater than the present Palouse River that you see right there. We've got a lot of great pictures up on the Geocosmic Rex website and some awesome video clips. On our
I'm curious.
Geocosmic Rex, R-E-X.
Rex, okay.
And
I thought you were saying wreck, like a car wreck.
Well, it's a play on words.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we are talking about that.
Okay.
But yeah, we got some great drone footage on there. Did we show that last time I was
don't
here?
believe we did. We might have.
I think we showed a bit of
I think we did.
the Camas Prairie ripples.
Did we show potholes, cataract? This whole scabland thing has literally fascinated me since 1970, and like Malcolm, I think that summer of 1970, traveling out in some of these landscapes was. Here we go.
This is the drone footage. Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, and let's see, be ready to pause if we need to here. Is this the beginning? Because at the beginning we have a Google Earth image so you can get a sense of what we're looking at here. Go back to the beginning, right at the very beginning. Let's see if...
Starts off with the drone.
Oh, it starts off with the drone. Okay, there should be another one that actually...
That's okay. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, these are 400-foot cliffs. This was a
so dangerous,
recessional
man. It's so
cataract, very
sad.
similar to dry falls.
That's
the water
so sad,
was
man.
pouring,
It's so
coming
dangerous.
from behind our view here.
Where is this
I'm
specifically?
just so
if anybody wanted to
shocked
watch
at
this?
how
Look at
dangerous the
this area?
design is.
Oh, the
It's
actual
so
area?
crazy.
This is
Yeah.
in eastern Washington.
Where
This is on the
specifically?
eastern
The
rim
arc?
of Quincy Basin. It's
Just
called.
like
It's right
the
along-
arcing
Just if you can see
of
up there,
potential of
where those
the
cliffs are in
design
the middle distance, right
is
below there
very
is the
likely.
Columbia River. And this is just north of Wenatchee, Washington.
I've seen many videos where
So
that's
basically
where
we
what
had here
happens.
was
It's just
a,
arcs
pluck-
for whatever reason.
pouring as the water poured over this ridge. This is the Babcock Ridge, and behind
Right,
us
it
is the
doesn't, like,
Quincy
not
Basin,
connecting,
which
not
serves as
touching,
a
it just
temporary holding pond.
through air.
And let's see, as the drone comes around, I'm looking for the
Sorry, man.
team. Oh, keep going. Zoom in a little bit more there, Jamie.
Yeah, I think we did show this. You can see you guys down there on the ground, right?
Yeah, we're in there somewhere, lost in the vastness of the.
Yeah, now I remember we did show this.
Yeah.
What about those images of the mastodons? Let's look at those and then let's get out of here.
Okay. For that, you have to go to the world of the Pleistocene, which I just should have given.
That sounds like a amusement park.
Yeah.
The world of the Pleistocene.
Could be
You
a
go
winner.
there and there's some dudes with animal skins on them.
Well, maybe if they
Pointed
succeed
sticks.
in, cloning some of those
Yeah.
flash frozen animals up there, maybe
They're
we
really talking
get,
about doing
like,
that, right?
What? Yeah, I don't know how plausible it is, but
That
hey,
seems like a terrible idea. The lost world
What
of the
could go
Pleistocene. Nothing. It's not like there's any diseases. Well, that's one of the big concerns about climate change, right?
I don't
That
know
we're
what
gonna
that
release
means.
Some diseases that we don't have an immune system for.
yeah. Go to slide 78. This is a good example of.
By the way,